Yo, what's up guys? Another video talking about more reloaded stuff. Wanted to make a video about some kind of special league or whatnot, but this is actually a lot more interesting to talk about because this is something that's affecting everyone in a certain sense. So, as you've seen it in the title, what will be the difference between the B10, what we currently have as B12, so in the new one we will only have a B10, and Abyss. So, one thing I want you to keep in mind, the B10 here is a level 65. The B12 is a level 75. If we keep that towards this thing where we can see all of the patch notes, we can see what the level is of the new B10. And that has also been the question, is the new or is the old B12 the new B10? As they mentioned for drop rates, yes. But then people also expect that for stats that we will still get the B12 stats for a B10. Technically, I actually think not. And there's two reasons for it. B10 will still cost 8 energy and not 9 energy. So that is already a pretty big improvement, even though, like, if they change the stats or not. Like, that 1 energy is quite some. But then you also have the extra factor saying, okay, this B10 is level 65. And B10 on level 65 is going to be the B10 as we have right now. If they keep true to their statement of saying we will have the same drop rate for B12 or the old B12 as now in B10s, then that would be very easy. And from that, we can actually make a calculation of how much better pretty much the hard Abyss has to be more useful than the B10s. Because B10s, probably you haven't farmed them in a very long time, but let me show you how easy it is to farm B10s these days. So if we go in this one with a team, this isn't a star that's absolutely not optimized for this. This is a vampire star if you want to run this properly with this team on a B10 where you can still also the new B10s, you can still use those new units. Also, disclaimer, this is a highly speculative video because I actually don't know about anything, whether how it works or anything like that. But if we just check how this works in B10s, B10s are very easy right now. And if I would have a rage, a star, I would probably one-shot the waves. I think I would get close to one-shotting the waves. Maybe not one-shotting the boss, but this one would die in one hit earlier as well. And we're looking at crazy, crazy fast runs. If this gives the drop rate, that is a 20-second flat. I think I will get consistent 20-second flats on these. If we will get that for the B12 drop rate, which technically is not bad, that would be pretty nice. Also, a big factor to keep in mind, two things. Number one, Abyssal Heart still does drop blue runes, which I thought was going to be the factor. Abyssal is not going to drop blue runes anymore. If it still drops blue runes, it is kind of meh. However, the rate in which it drops blue runes is pretty important. So that part we don't know for sure yet. Also, really big factor is you cannot get intangible runes from the B10. So for that reason, maybe just for that reason solely, it's already more useful to farm the Abyssal Hearts. But beating a 20-second team that is so consistent and relatively a lot easier to build than maybe a very hard to build team for the B12 or like the Abyssal Heart might be an interesting trade-off. And this is actually something we can somewhat look into and speculate how much better the drop rate should be for Abyssal Heart to actually overcome that this is so easy to farm, so fast to farm, costs 8 mana compared to, or 8 energy compared to the 10, and stuff like that. So let's actually look at some drop rates, and I did create something to pretty much track that the moment the patch goes live as well. So if we go to Swar Farm, in Swar Farm it's possible to see for each dungeon what are the drop rates, and we can actually check it. Oh, we're in the dragons. Let's track the dragons B12 and then dragons B10 and compare those two. So of course we see all of the stats, we see the amount of rune drops and that kind of stuff. We see that we get like all of those kind of things. I would assume that the extra energy and crystals get back would be higher. Also assume that the mystical scrolls will be higher on the abyssal normal. Maybe we get some more rainbow mons. Maybe we even get a rainbow mon 4-star. I wouldn't be surprised actually if we would get that. And then we can see that we get legendaries at a 3.2 rate. However, these are the legendaries that are only 6 stars. If we check them for the B10s, they include the 5 stars as well. And I don't think I can separate them specifically of saying like, okay, what are the legendaries for each of the individual ones? Because if I check it for the B10s, yeah, it shows 7.7, but you have a 70% chance to get 5 stars. If B10s no longer drop 5 stars but get this drop rate of the B12s with a 100% 6 star, that will be really insane. So definitely curious to see how that works out. But if we have this 3.2% on legendaries and we farm it in 20 seconds, if we would have a dungeon that runs at least 3 times longer, that has higher the amount of requirement for energy. So let's say, what are the differences between those? So I just made a very simple thing. Let's say I clear B10s in 20 seconds. Let's say the drop rate is 3.2, and let's say the energy cost is 8. If we go from this, we have an increase of 1.25. Let's say it will cost me a minute, which is somewhat reasonable, I would say. We have an increase of 3 times. So technically you could add up these numbers. It's not really the best of formula, but let's say that that would be, these are the multipliers that we're looking at. So our 4.2. If we want to add a 4.2 in this value though, maybe people are not really understanding what I'm doing, but we need a legend drop rate of 15%? No, like 14% to actually get this trade-off. It's not the best of trade-offs, but you kind of get what I'm saying by, okay, we take 3 times as long, we take more energy cost. This is what the legendary drop rate should improve to actually get to a point of where it's fair to farm. But if and only if B10s actually straight up get the B12 drop rates. And that is only looking specific at legendary runes, that not looking at the whole drop table of whatever it gives and all of that kind of good stuff. We have to keep in mind there's probably a lot more to it and a lot more stuff going on than just that. And when looking at this, I'm not sure if B10 is actually going to get the full drop table of B12. Because if that's the case, if B10 is actually going to get the full drop table of B12 and the stats still remain of the stats of B10, then I would honestly say farming B10 seems a lot more attractive than farming this B12s, especially if you have to have if there's a certain event that asks you, hey, spam a lot of energy or that kind of stuff, and you get the drop table of a B12. That is definitely something interesting to farm, and that's definitely something. Of course, once again, it's highly speculative. I have no clue whether the drop table is going to be like that. Those are just the things that I picked up from the stream, saying that they were going to compress the B12s to the B10s. So that kind of means that they're merging things together. And the interesting part is where they kept the same level, and keeping the same level means they keep the same stats. Because it would be strange to have things on a lower level with the same stats. That's not normally how they do things. So again, it's could be a thing, could be a thing. But yeah, we have to look at a pretty crazy 14%. Like if you drop a legendary rune, 14% chance of getting, if you drop a rune, 14% chance of getting a legendary rune, to pretty much overtake if we would take twice as much time, or 3 times as much time. Let's say we can still clear it pretty fast. I would say that maybe we can drag this down to a 40 seconds. We're looking at a 3.25, then we would have to have a drop rate of around 10. So that's kind of how we can play around with this. I will save this. I will definitely use this the moment we actually get the patch live, and I will definitely use this to check the things that are going on, seeing whether one is more worth it than the other. Of course, I'll be making a whole bunch of dungeon guides, dungeon team, but of course I'll also be saying what is most interesting to farm in which kind of way. So definitely stay tuned for those videos. I also made this thing which you might be familiar with, which I used for RTA in the past. This is just something that is going to determine all of the runs I did, how many runes I did, the kind of clear speed that I have, what team I used for it, and this is all somewhat automatically generated and that kind of stuff. For that reason, yeah, it's just a lot easier to keep track of things. And I didn't do too many runs of it. These are just my runs of yesterday. I created this yesterday pretty much. I do know Swar Farm does something similar already, but I wanted to have slightly more control over it, of also checking the different teams and also checking the different speeds between the different teams. So this is definitely something you will be seeing a lot more in the coming days with the dungeon guides. It's not the best of looking. I'm not an art designer. I'm just a lazy programmer that just fills this in pretty quick and dirty. But yeah, this can at least give me some insight in some of the statistics of saying like, okay, what are reasonable clear times, what are reasonable drop rates, what are good teams, because in this I can also check for specific teams what are their clear times and that kind of stuff, how many times they failed. In this case I don't show the amount of fails, but I could put that in here if I would like to. So the succession rate, all of that kind of good stuff I can track in here, so that's pretty nice. I would have to reset at the moment the patch hits, because otherwise it's overriding this one, I guess, or at least this one. But yeah, that's pretty interesting to see. So I'm very hyped for this update. I'm very curious to see what kind of teams we can craft. Already started thinking a bit about the new dungeon for crafting. I think the new dungeon is not going to be that hard in all honesty, because the new dungeon just goes to B10s. We won't have an abyss stage for it right away. So in all honesty, I don't expect too much from the new stage or the new dungeon. The new dungeon is also going to be a dungeon that I think not too many people are going to farm, because, well, seal runes seem good, but all of the other combined runes are actually runes we kind of stay away from in most cases, except fight runes, I would guess. But yeah, definitely hyped to see that. Definitely curious to see how that all works. Also pretty curious to see if there's maybe not a few things that they didn't necessarily show at the patch notes before, but there are actually, or at the developer notes before, but they're actually going to be in there as well, because there's still quite a bunch of question marks throughout certain things. Also, big question mark, are the new units actually going to be good for PvE in a certain way? Please, please, I've seen that they have multi-hits. Please, net 4 fire, have a multi-hitter buff blocker on your first skill. Please, multi-hits many times. Please, I want to kill SF with a proper team, finally. God damn it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. If you like this PvE content, or you just want to be not taking care of it at all and just wanting to go for the best team, follow my guides. It's pretty easy. Follow this channel, like this video. Guys, see you in the next one.